Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Guest List podcast. I'm your host, Steve Guest. Really energised and looking forward to getting stuck into speaking with today's guest. A bit of an intro if you haven't listened to this podcast before. Guest List podcast was born out of my first book, Top Biller, The Life of a Recruiter. And I was getting bombarded with questions, scenarios, people that wanted answers and ideas and kind of things to go and do in terms of improving performance and reaching higher levels of achievements. And I couldn't answer them all. So I created a podcast where I could invite guests on that have far more interesting lives than me and have achieved far more to share their background and their stories so that you can all gain some value. Today's guest is no different. I'm going to jump straight into the bio and chat through. Today's guest is UK's leading expert at creating no money down property investment techniques. Started in property back in 2003, making lots of mistakes and lost a lot of money, but recovered to build a 10 million plus property portfolio. Author of Amazon bestseller, No Money Down Property Investing. Today's guest is Kevin McDonnell.
Hi, Steve. Great to be here. Pleasure to be on your podcast. And I believe it's going really, really well. So, well done for launching it and for making it such a success as well. So, pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It's been a really humbling journey, to be honest. And from a selfish perspective, I get to speak to lots of great people. And I think that adds value not only to me, but the listeners. You, I have no doubt, will be no different.
No pressure.
Well, we've known each other for a few years, haven't we?
We have, probably what, three years now, maybe a bit more.
I reckon I probably first met you at Multiple Streams of Income, maybe 2017.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because I lost a couple of years in the middle there somewhere, like everybody lost. I won't mention how, but yeah.
Yeah, it's been a funny old time, hasn't it? But yeah, I reckon 5 years ago. And just give me a bit of an overview as to you, what's happened, because you originally were in construction, weren't you?
Yeah, so obviously from the accent, people probably tell I'm Irish. So I grew up in the west of Ireland, and it basically just on a farm with 7 siblings. So I have 6 sisters and brothers, and we were all just taught to get a good education, get a good job, get a job for life and a pension, and retire happy or broke, whichever way it ends up. And I moved
traditional upbringing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, traditional upbringing of you got to work hard for money. Money doesn't grow on trees, etc. And I moved to the UK 2002 to get a job, because in Ireland I've got one brother, so my elder brother got the farm and I got shown the road basically. So I'm just like many Irish. I came to just like my uncles before me. I went to London and got a job working in a construction company, which was an Irish construction company. Typical journey. Ray O'Rourke and Son at the time, that then became Lang O'Rourke. Yeah. And I spent well over a decade working for them. But I got interested in property investing because I shared a house with a lad. So there was 5 of us. I didn't even realize this, but Lang O'Rourke put me up in a house when I moved over, because I said to them I didn't know where to go in London. I didn't know anything about London. They said, don't worry about that. We'll put you up in a house until you find your feet. So I was sharing a house with me and 4 other guys, 5 of us, that all worked for Lang O'Rourke. And one of them was a lad called William from South Africa. And he was over in London, earning money in London, but taking it back to South Africa to buy property. And he had 6 houses at the time, and he got me interested in property investing. So that was my sort of first introduction to property. And he actually invited me to an event in London back in 2003, just about 3 hours one evening, to hear about property investing professionally. And this really tweaked my interest even more, because I was thinking, well, most of the rich list have either made their money in property or invested into property. So I thought, well, I'm all in on this stuff. But I went away trying to do it alone. And I went to the property investor show at the Excel Center, where there's all these pop-up stands. Yeah. And I got introduced to, back in the early 2000s, if anybody listening to this remembers or watching this, the off-plan abroad boom. Well, I decided that I didn't have much savings. I had about 8 grand saved. So I couldn't buy a house with 8 grand in England. I couldn't put a deposit even down on with 8 grand. I thought I needed deposits. So I took it and I bought 3 off-plan abroads, where I spread my 8 grand across 3 down payments on a property in Estonia, another one in Turkey, and another one in Bulgaria. I did 2 of them at the Property Investor Show at the Excel Centre. And then I went home to Ireland for Christmas, and I went to a property show in Ireland, and I decided, well, I'd get another one. So I got the Turkey one out of an Irish show, and I got the Estonia and Bulgaria from the Property Investor Show. So I ended up with 3 off-plan properties and no plan of how I was going to pay for them. So I had to meet the staged payments, and it turned into a huge disaster. Estonia never got built. Turkey got finished, but I had to get rid of it, and I sold it for half what I paid for it. And the Bulgaria one got finished, but it actually, there was extortionate management fees, and you know the story, Steve. It literally got trashed. So we voted out the management company, and they came back about 6 weeks, 7 weeks after we voted them out as the managing agent, and they literally ripped the whole place apart. So they took everything: the kitchens, the skylights, the aircon, literally everything.
This was after you'd refurbed it as well.
After it was built, brand new apartment built. It had been running for a couple of years, but no income. And they were charging us. So we were losing money on the management. So we got together, all 56 apartment owners, all English and Irish. We got together. I still remember the day. It was the Crown Plaza in Birmingham. And we held an extraordinary general meeting, an EGM basically. And under Bulgarian law, you could vote out the management company. And we found this English couple that lived in Bansko that said they'd manage it for us. But when we put them in place, the old company came back within about 6 weeks and ripped everything out. And they came back with the local police to do it. And it was just it was basically the local Bulgarian mafia, where they just owned the police, they owned the court system, etc. And they were saying they took back their contents. But like, when was skylights and kitchens ever contents? It was just a complete scam. So yeah, I lost over 135 grand across the 3 properties. But of money I didn't have. So I then stuck my head in the sand and did nothing for about 6 years, trying to dig my way out of debt and a job. And then I just restarted.
That would frighten you. I mean, 135 grand, buying 3 properties in 3 countries with the money that you had.
Have you seen what's on top of your head?
Yeah.
It's called hair, for anybody listening. What's not on mine. It didn't just frighten me, it stressed the life out of me. Honestly, my brother is 10 years older than me. He's got a full head of hair. I went, within an 18-month period, I went from having a full head of hair to having very little through stress. And it was really, really difficult, but it is what it is. It was my stupidity that did it in the end. I blamed everybody and anybody but myself, and eventually I realized that the only person at fault here was you, and I had to sort myself out.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, I mean, I think that would stop most people from even thinking about getting back into property, wouldn't it?
It would. And people always ask me this question, Steve: if property cost you so much money, why did you restart? And I always say I got lucky in a way, because I know for a fact because I quit, I didn't keep going. A lot of people go, oh, you were really good to keep going. I didn't keep going. I quit for 6 years. Mm-hmm. So I literally gave up from 2007 to 2013. I pretty much quit. And the only reason I restarted properly was because, number one, is I met a guy at an event in 2007, and I seen him again in 2013. And when I met him in 2007, he was in debt. And when I met him in 2013, a guy called Cam Devady. And when I met him in 2013, he was wealthy through property. So I needed to see somebody else that was in debt do well for me to believe I could. The second reason was I spent 6 years trying to dig my way out of debt, and I couldn't. I quit for 6 years. But the reason I restarted was because I lost so much money. See, I know for a fact today, if I lost 20 grand, I'd have been able to earn my way out of 20 grand worth of debt. Yeah. And I'd never have touched property again, and I'd still be in a corporate job today. But because I lost over 100 grand, I lost so much money that there was no way I was going to earn my way out of it. And the paradox, I guess, is the thing that put me in debt was property. But after 6 years of trying, I realized the only thing that could get me back out of debt was property. So I had no choice but to keep going. So it wasn't that I was, weren't you great to go and keep going? No, I just had no other choice. Yeah.
It's one hell of a lesson, isn't it?
It's one hell of a lesson, but like, it's also one hell of a story. it's not, I wouldn't recommend it on anybody, by the way. It's not a good, but it's one hell of a lesson, but it also, today, it's allowed me, everything good in my life that's come out of my life has come from that loss. And quite often when I speak to people, they focus on the bad things that have happened to them in their lives, but they miss all of the good that comes out of that bad. Yeah. And some of the most important things that have happened in my life have happened because of that. Number one is because I had no money, I had no choice but to learn how to do property creatively. While sometimes people with money, they get a little bit lazy and they just use their money. But I realized that property investing, the whole point of property is not to put money into houses. The whole point is to get the house to pay you. Yeah. And I used other people's money. I used joint venture partners, private investors, but also other people's houses. So you can rent houses off people and then on a guaranteed rent and then re-let them out. So I used all these different techniques. But I was also living in a shared house. And in 2013, the first deal, when I got restarted, one of the first deals I did was to replace my own house. So I was thinking to myself, listen, I'm paying 350 odd quid a month to a landlord to rent a room in a shared house. Why don't I just rent a whole house, pay somebody for the whole house, and then rent the other rooms out and live for free? So I did that in 2013, and 3 people moved into the house with me. So the 3 rents covered my costs, and I had a free room and a free office within the house. But then one of those people that moved in turned out to be my wife. So had I not lost all that money in Eastern Europe, I'd never have learned creative property investment techniques. I'd probably never have restarted in property if I didn't lose so much. And that means I'd never have met my wife, and I'd never have my family that I have today. I wouldn't have my kids. So literally everything, sometimes when you fall down, it's because there's something down there that's meant to bring you back up stronger, I guess. Yeah. And I'd say to anybody listening to this, if you're facing challenges, if bad has happened in your life, and just look at the things that have come out of it. Have you met contacts? Have you met connections? Have you reached out and looked for a podcast like this and met somebody like Steve just because of the bad that happened? So always, I spent most of my life looking at the problems and blaming the world for my problems and looking at all the bad that could happen. And I never really looked for the good that was in it. And today I've just changed my entire thought process of when bad shit happens, where is the good that can bring you back stronger? And if you take that approach in life, you'll do okay.
It's so true, isn't it? I think learning to flip it. We're so accustomed sometimes, I think, to see the negative in things and dwell on it and not necessarily want to even move on because we become so stuck. And actually, the bad things, I was thinking today, because I've got to record a solo podcast later, it's about that voice in your head that stops you from doing things because of the fear or what's happened in your past before, and you end up not doing something that actually something positive could come from.
Yeah.
It is crazy, isn't it, how our kind of the human mind works half the time.
The human body, the human mind is we always focus on the bad, most people, and we're a computer. You can train yourself to focus on the good. Because I always say as well, it's impossible. I challenge the listeners. It's impossible, number one. There's only one thing impossible in life, and it's impossible to think an impossible thought. So if you think of something that's achievable, it's impossible to think an impossible thought. The other thing that's impossible is it's impossible, right, to think positively and negatively at the same time. Try it. If you try to think positively and negative at the same time, you can't. So if you put positive thoughts into your head, it's impossible to think negative.
Yeah, I love that.
And you've got to just train yourself to do that.
Yeah. So we mentioned your best-selling book, No Money Down, Property Investing. You've mentioned a couple of strategies there while we were talking. There we go. Look at that. Right on cue. And it is a great book. I have read it a couple of times. Talk to me about No Money Down, because you say things like that out in the big wide world and you get loads of abuse. You can't buy property without any money. You've got to be borrowing it from somewhere. You've got to be doing something else. Talk to me about that. What's
okay. You get loads. Lots of people will say, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't do this. You can't do." There's typically 4 concepts to No Money Down. Number 1 is you can do property deals with no money. Number 2 is none of your money, so you could use other people's money. Number 3 is no money left in. So you would buy a property, maybe refurbish it, add value to it, and leave no money in.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also do that without even buying it. So you could, I'll give you an example in a moment on what's called an assisted sale. But so no money, none of your money, no money left in, or very little money. So rather than paying 25% deposit, or if your family home, 10% deposit, plus stamp duty and all the buying costs, what if you could get control of a property for as little as £1 plus some legal fees on what's called an option agreement? Now, it's not no money, but it's significantly less than 25% deposits. And then somebody listening to this and go, well, the fourth concept's not really no money down, is it? It needs £1 or it needs legal fees. Well, what if you borrowed the £1? So it doesn't also have to be your money. So it's really the concept, 4 different concepts of no money down investing. There's lots of different techniques. Most people who are looking to build a property business, they've got what I call strategies. So they want to do single buy-to-let, so they want to do houses in multiple occupation, HMOs. They want to do serviced accommodation, so like Airbnb, Booking.com, or they want to do commercial property, whatever it may be. But they know what they want to do. They know the strategy. But what they're missing is the acquisition method. So their plan to get the property is either cash or a mortgage. But what if they could add in other techniques like lease option agreements, or exchange but delay the completion, assisted sales, vendor finance? So where the owner, basically seller financing. This house I'm in right now is my family home. This property was purchased by the vendor financing our purchase. So we purchased the house, but the owner basically waited for the deposit money. So we didn't have to come up with any money to get into the deal. So finding owners where they're open to creative opportunities. Now, they'll make more money and we make more money. And the only people that miss out really are the greedy banks and the government, because we can get deals with no stamp duty or less stamp duty. We can get deals with no finance costs or less finance costs, less expenses on legals, if you do things creatively where people start to work together. So there's loads of different concepts, but it's really how you deliver what you want to do. I want to build a property business, but the average investor's got 2 houses in the UK. And if you want to build a big property business, really you got to think a little bit more creatively about how you do it. And if anybody's listening to this, Stephen, they're thinking, well, you need money to buy a house. I challenge them right now to think about how they bought theirs, because they'll probably say they bought it with a mortgage and a deposit. Now, if they bought it with a mortgage, have a think at home. You bought it with a mortgage. Did you borrow the money from a bank? Because if you did, right, the reality is the money that you borrowed from the bank did not have that money. It's called a fractional reserve. So if everybody, where are you based, Steve, today? What town are you in?
Aldridge, Walsall.
Walsall, right? So if everybody in Walsall went out today and drew their money out of Halifax Bank, it would crash Halifax. We already know this from Northern Rock back in the 2000s. Why? Because the money is not in the bank. The bank can lend up to 17 odd times the amount of money they have in their bank account. Mm-hmm. So it's a fractional reserve. They're lending more money than they've actually got. It's a number on a computer screen. The money is actually in the bricks and mortar of the house. So you bought a house and the bank lent you money that you didn't have. Now, if you think about this, let's say you bought a house off Joe Bloggs and you never asked Joe Bloggs what their mortgage was, because they don't get what they get. They get their equity bit. So you paid 200 grand for the house, example. Joe Bloggs' solicitor received 200 grand, and then Joe Bloggs' solicitor paid off the mortgage and left Joe with whatever was left after all the fees. Now, let's say you bought the house and you took a mortgage from Halifax to buy the house. Well, guess who was lending the money to Joe? Halifax. So you basically, definition of insanity is you took out a brand new mortgage with Halifax and cleared off an old mortgage with Halifax. Why not just take over the existing debt? And the reason is because people didn't know they could. But that's what no money down investing techniques is all about, because the richest people on this planet have always done this stuff. Philip Green bought the shares at Topshop for £1. Thomas Cook was sold for £1 to the Hayes Group in 2019. And Ken Bates bought Chelsea Football Club 40 years ago for £1. And they all did it using creative investment techniques. The richest on the planet have always done it. And if I didn't learn this stuff in 2013, I'd never have got started in property. I'd certainly never have built up a £10 million plus portfolio. I wouldn't be in this home that I'm in right now, because I've used techniques to create all of this stuff. So if you're sitting at home and you're thinking, no money down, you can't really do it, you've got to question your own thinking. Because one more thing, Steve, and I'll go back to you.
No.
You know the deposit. You know the deposit that people use, Steve. You know their deposit.
Yeah.
Guess where their deposit money was? Where do you think it was?
In a savings account.
In a savings account in the bank, right? So then they'll open up their phone and they'll go, there's my money. I bet you most people watching this who bought a house with a deposit didn't see their own money. What I mean by that is they didn't physically draw it out and count it out in cash. It was in a savings account in the bank. Now, we already agreed a few minutes ago that if everybody in Walsall went out and drew their money out of Halifax today, you'd crash the banking system. So guess where your own, not only is the bank's money not in the bank, guess where your own money is not? It's not in the bank. You see, you leave your life savings in the bank earning 0.0% or 0.0001% or whatever low interest rate you get. And then somebody like me comes along as a professional property investor, and I borrow your money from the bank plus 17 times your money. I borrow it at 3, 4, 5%, and then I make 10, 20, 100% on it through a property investing. You see, whether people are in property or not, their money is.
Yeah. I love all of that. Do you know what? I love listening to you. And we spoke on occasion, haven't we, when deals have come up, and I've got to kind of think of a creative way. And you are always the top of the list. You make my head spin at times, but I do really love it. I remember you telling me a property deal. It was a bowling green, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Can you just remind me that story? Because I love that story.
Right, yeah. So there was a bowling club in our town. And people would go, where do you invest? I invest in my area. You stick to yours. You see, everybody, before I go to the bowling green story, Steve, is everybody's looking. Everybody thinks their area is the worst. Oh, I'd love to do property, but my area is really bad. That's because you're trying to buy the thing. That's because you're trying to, you go, I don't have a deposit to buy. You're not thinking creatively about securing the deal. But people in London want to invest in Manchester. And people in Manchester want to invest in Liverpool. And people in Liverpool want to invest in Newcastle. Manchester might not want to invest in Liverpool. But people in Newcastle want to invest in Leeds. And people in Leeds want to invest in London. Everybody wants to be somewhere else. Your area is the most important area because you're the subject matter expert of your area. The reason I invest in my area is because that's where I lived. Okay, so I moved north in 2009 because I wanted to move to an area that was cheaper where I could buy property. I had still done nothing by 2013. I got rid of my excuse, which was I'm in the wrong area. And I still did nothing because the area that wasn't fixed was my head. I needed to fix my own thought processes about what I could do in my business, no matter where I was. Property works everywhere. But the bowling club example, don't worry about where it is. It'll work in your town. What do we know about bowling greens? Outside bowling greens, nobody plays the sport anymore. It's a dying sport. And the bowling club in our town came up for sale, and a guy who attends a networking event that I go to messaged me, a guy called Ben, and he said, are you aware the bowling greens for sale? And I wasn't, but he said, so I would have probably found out, but I've just found myself a JV partner because he picked up the phone to me. So he said, I don't know what to do, how to negotiate it, but I know you're not too bad at negotiation. Do you want to have a look? So I said, okay, I'll take a look. I walked into the property and so Ben arranged for me to meet the chairman of the club. And one evening I walked in, probably about 6:30 in the evening, and inside in the bowling green, there's like a cottage building. Then there's a two-story cottage, a three-story building next to it. And then at the back, there's a single-story extension, which is got a bar in there, and it's got snooker tables, and it's got poker tables. And when I walked in the door, the first thing I seen was the snooker tables. Now, I used to play pool for Ireland, so I don't know if anybody is. I'll move this a little just so you see. When I played pool for Ireland, I tell this to people all the time. I got all these like trophies there, and more on the other side over there. But for anyone on a podcast, you can't see this, but I don't know if you put this on YouTube or not or whatever.
Yeah, it goes on YouTube.
You do. So if you could pop over to Steve's YouTube channel, he can tell you what it is, and I can see the office there and the view. But just in case anyone was thinking that background was like a fake screen, it's real. No.
It's real, yeah.
But I never made any money from pool until the day I walked into that bowling green, because the first thing I said to the guy was, do you want a game of snooker? So we had a game. And there was a company, a Chinese investment company that had put an offer on the building, which was around 150 grand. And I had a game of snooker. We had a walk around the building. We came back, we had another game, and we were having a drink and whatever. And he said to me, so are you interested in making an offer? Now, most people in property would have offered a bit more than the other company or tried to buy it on a price. They're trying to buy the thing. And all I said to him was, well, to be honest, it's not about the price, is it? And he said, how do you mean? And I said, well, it's more about the long-term sustainability of your club. See, one of the things he said to me was, when we were walking around, there's 12 teams in the local league. So the local bowling league, 12 teams. And I said, how far do you travel and stuff? And he said, well, to be honest, he says, you're not going to believe this, but when we go away from home, 8 times in a 12-team league, we play our away games at home because the other clubs have already sold their grounds. So they're worried about having to sell up their ground. And what their plan was to sell their buildings and then use the money to build another bowling green, to build another club overlooking their green. So they would have sold it and used pretty much all of their money that they got from the sale to build another new club overlooking the green. And within 3 or 4 years, they'd have run out of money again. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I said to him, to be honest, it's not about the money, it's about the long-term sustainability of the club. The other offer, it didn't matter how high it was. Now he's open to doing something creative. Mm-hmm. So we just worked out a creative deal where we would buy both buildings, and our offer was 138 grand, way less than the other offers, but we would buy the clubs. We didn't need this. We only wanted the 2-story bungalow and the 3-story property. We didn't want this extension at the side. So we did a title split where they would keep the snooker table area, the poker table area, the bar area. They didn't even know they could do that. We just title split it so they could keep that. So they didn't need to build another club. Then they had some loans that they paid off. So they paid off the loans, just the directors' loans and stuff. The shareholders had put loans in, cleared those loans. We've got an option to buy the rest of the ground at any time in the future. So we secured a lease option agreement, an option where we can buy the rest of the club at any time in the future. So we've basically got first refusal. Nobody else can get in before us. Mm-hmm. And the money that they were getting off us, they didn't really need it. So because it's a club. So we can borrow the money back off them and pay them annual interest on the money. And that interest can cover the running costs of the club, meaning that they've got their future secured for them for 50, 60 plus years. So just being creative, if we gave them money, they'd have already spent it. Mm-hmm. But by giving them a plan that sustains their club, it means everybody wins. And this is what you get when you start thinking creatively around no money down investing. How can I make this deal work for me, but it's a win for them as well?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So I've heard that a few times and it still makes me smile every time I listen to it. And I think one of the big things for me, and you know this as well, you get a lot of people that go on to build a kind of wealth journey and create that path forward. And it all starts with that Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, Robert Kiyosaki. Everyone tends to have read that at the start, and it's been a kind of
first book I ever read.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's amazing how many people read that book and then go on to do things. And I think you said something there where there's a bit in the book where he's looking to buy that sports car, that first red sports car, and his first thought is, I'll never be able to afford it. And then he gets to the point where it's, how do I get to a point to be able to afford it? And that's the difference. That's the key difference, isn't it? It's how do I do it? And then that kind of gets the creative juices going to think, okay, well, what do I need to do? That's why you're my first point of call, because you're the creative thinker. I'm the logical spreadsheet guy that everything is matter of fact. And I need to train myself to think more creatively.
You know, that if you're listening to this and you want to become wealthy, the first 2 books, you want to change your thinking. The first 2 books you should read, definitely Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah. And the second one might be No Money Down Property Investing.
And the third one is Top Biller, The Life of a Recruiter.
Top Biller, The Life of a Recruiter is a must-read book. I've got a signed copy from Steve, right? It's pride of place on my shelf. You got to be reading Top Biller.
I love that. I love that. So, I mean, we've kind of touched on it a little bit there in terms of surrounding yourself with the right people. We don't always know all the answers, but having the people that we need to go to when we have questions or we need a pick me up. Who would you say are the people that you have been most inspired by, or the people that you perhaps hold close and get you out of scrapes or give you ideas or answers?
Okay, that's pretty easy, really. It's Rob Moore at Progressive Property is the go-to person. So, no, when I walked in the door of Progressive Property, which is a property investment and education company in Peterborough, I walked in the door of that building in end of 12, but I really started 2013. And I was financially broken, but I was also mindset broken. And being around, now when I say Rob Moore, it's not just Rob Moore, it's actually people. Rob Moore mentors me and his co-business partner, Mark Homer. But without them, I wouldn't be where I am. I won a competition once in 2014, probably, to drive Rob Moore to a speaking event because he couldn't drive. I won't tell you why. I lost his license. But so it lost at 45 minutes in the car with him, and he asked me, what do I do? And I said, I'm a quality manager. And he said, no, what do you do? And I said, I'm a quality manager. And he goes, no, you're not. You're a property investor. He said, if you're telling people you're a quality manager, you're a quality manager. You're a property investor. And one thing he always says is, you don't fake it till you make it, but you absolutely must be it till you see it. Yeah. And if I'm telling everybody internally, I'm telling myself I'm a quality manager, then that's what I am. If you want to be something else, you've got to be it to see it. You've got to start changing your thought process. How would somebody lend you money if you're not telling them what you do? So that drive in that car massively changed my thinking. He made me change my LinkedIn. He made me change my Facebook, everything to property investor. So he believed in me when other people didn't, to make me get that belief. And no matter how much I'm doing, no matter how big I'm thinking, I know there's somebody thinking bigger. And no matter how big a deal I'm doing, there's somebody doing a bigger deal. And no matter, how big a joint venture partnership I'm doing, somebody's doing a bigger joint venture partnership. There's always somebody at a higher level. And I do a lot of social media, I do a lot of lives, I do a lot of book writing, whatever it may be. But every time I go online, Rob Moore's online. And when you've got somebody that's doing more than you, no matter how much you do, it just drives you to try and do more all the time. So Rob Moore, definitely like number one on that list. Outside of that, then it's just other people. It's the community. At Progressive Property, I've been part of that community for years now. I've gone from the student to now being a mentor there and a teacher there. But the most inspiring thing for me is the other people, because success is not about one person. I've been one-to-one mentored in the past, and with a one-to-one mentor, I kind of didn't believe that I could do what they were telling me to do because they were ahead of me. But when you're in a group of like-minded people, and you've got people a little bit ahead of you to drag you up and answer your questions, but when there's a group of people together getting that support, that group of people are watching each other do deals, and suddenly they're like, okay, so if that person started at the same time as me and they can do a deal, then so can I. Yeah. So for me, it's not just one person. It's literally hundreds of people, a community of people who are all on the same journey together, inspiring each other to get success. That for me is one of the most important things. Is people chase this knowledge all the time, and they totally miss what's right in front of their face, which is it's the people that are the most important.
Yeah. It's the doing sometimes as well, isn't it?
So, yeah, but when other people are doing, it forces you mentally to do it as well. It's that positive peer pressure. But when you're at home, sitting in your office, YouTubing stuff, and I love podcasts. I've got my own podcast. I love podcasts. I love all that stuff. I love books. I love YouTube videos, but none of it can talk back to you. Like somebody will be listening to this now, but if they've got a question, they can't talk back to us. You got to reach out to Steve. You got to reach out to me, whoever it may be. But the thing about an event where you've got people at, a community where there's people in, you talk to each other, and that's where you get your real questions answered. And life is lonely. I mean, trying to be a recruiter, right? If you didn't have this podcast, if you didn't have your top biller book and stuff, most people in recruitment are alone. And it's the same in any industry, in property, no matter what it may be, they're alone. And unless you've got other people connected, what you're doing is amazing for recruitment, because you're connecting like-minded people who You know, you do procurement, isn't it? Or recruitment, or both?
Construction, commercial construction. So yeah, procurement's in there. Yeah. Yeah,
procurement's in there. So commercial construction. So, but it's very lonely for all those people too. When I worked in as a quality manager in construction for over a decade, there was nothing like your podcast or anything like this that you could reach out to learn anything about or connect with other people. And it's the people that makes the difference. So yeah, well done for what you're doing. But those listening, take advantage of this.
Yeah. We talked a little bit off air, and I owe a lot to Rob Moore. The initial conversations, I used to speak with Rob Moore over LinkedIn relatively frequently, and then I ended up coming to a Multiple Streams 2017 to get involved and invested in property. For me, that was a massive risk because it's so out of my comfort zone, and it took a lot just for me to go to those days. And I've since gone on and I've invested in property, and it's been awesome. But the big thing for me was mixing with the people like you, Rob Moore, various other people, various other mentors at the time that were saying you need to get out there, you need to put yourself out, you need to go and do social media videos, explain what you do, where you are. That got me started pretty much on social media, creating personal branding. It's allowed me to write a book, now 2 books, create podcasts. All of this comes from surrounding myself with people from Progressive at a time where I really needed people to motivate and empower and inspire. So everything you've said there is spot on. I've just taken it from perhaps the property sector and moved it across into recruitment, and I've done the same sorts of things.
Yeah, it's just people miss it all the time. The most important thing is the people. It really is. If you are around inspiring, like-minded people, you can't help but be dragged along. But most people are not. Most people are around the dude sitting next to them at work that you're not sure if they're alive or not, because the last time you seen them move was 1952. Or
there'll be some recruiters like that, to be fair.
Yeah. or they're around the next door neighbors who just spend their whole day mowing the lawns. Yeah. Or they're around I love my family. I love my mom. I love my brothers and sisters. I love my family. But one of my sisters said to me back in 2013, "Are you ever going to shut up about property?" I've never mentioned it since because they don't get it. I'll never shut up about property. So what I just did was shut up to her. My mom, I don't get my financial advice from my mom. I'm the one. I'm the youngest of 8 kids. I'm the one, genuinely the one. My mom's 88 years old today, but I'm the one she worries about most because I'm the one with no job. When are you going to sort yourself out, Kevin? But she doesn't realize if I told her what my wealth was today, if I told her about what I had as a business, she wouldn't see it as possible because it's not her financial thermostat. It's not what she could believe as something that was possible. So I just don't talk to her about it. So financial advice, family is for family, and financial advice, I've got my property family. So it's almost like you create 2 families, but one of them is you can't choose the family you're born into, and everyone hopefully loves their family they're born into, and I love mine if you listen to this. But it doesn't mean you should get your financial advice from your family when there's better financial advice maybe out there.
Yeah, it's so true. It's knowing who to listen to for what you need the answers for, and make sure you're going to the right people. So talk to me now. So what's happening at the moment? Have you got big deals on? I see you doing quite a bit you had Multiple Streams last week, was it, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, so we run a 3-day event, Multiple Streams of Property Income, where we talk through loads of different ways to get started in property. If anybody wants to know about that, reach out to Steve. I'm sure he can sort you out some tickets or something. I'll get him a link or something where he can help you out with. But I'm doing my biggest deal ever right now, Steve. I'm working on it. It's nearly there. It's been painful. It's been going on since January. And this comes back to people as well, because you'd like the bowling club, Steve. You're going to love this. So I'm buying a portfolio for 1.67 million. Now, back in January, I see it's 34 properties in total, but it's 23 where we own them. So it's 1-bed townhouses and 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. So it's 23 plus 11 that we own the freehold of, but they're leasehold. So they've been sold on leases. But so 34 in total, but 11 are leaseholds. So back in January, I noticed this portfolio available. And it's actually a whole company been sold. And this is the thing about thinking creatively as well. So I'll go around to this. But I rang up the agency and asked for a viewing on a Monday morning, to which they said, no problem, you can view on Thursday. Now, the person in the agency obviously went to their boss and the owner of the agency, and they came back to me Monday afternoon saying, I'm really sorry, we've had multiple offers. We spoke to the owners and they're going to first and final bids tomorrow, the Tuesday. And I said, well, I've got a viewing on Thursday. And they said, well, I'm really sorry, apologies for that. And so I had to make an offer without ever seeing it. Now, I realized what happened afterwards. It was pretty obvious in a way, but it dawned on me within a few days, was they didn't want me to buy it because the agency selling it were also managing it. It was a letting agency. Yeah. So the management fees, the annual management fees are about 15 grand a year. Now, I've got my own lettings business. So if they sold it to me, I would have took all the management. It'd cost them 15 grand a year. If they sold it to somebody else, they'd keep the management.
Yeah.
So be careful out there. But I lost it. They rang me on the Thursday and they said, I'm sorry, your bid isn't the highest bid. And you mentioned multiple streams of property income. Well, on Friday, I went to multiple streams of property income. But in the meantime, Thursday evening, because it was a company, I went on company's house and I found that there was 3 directors. Now, one of them was in his mid-80s, one of them was in his mid-70s, and one of them was about 60, 61 years old. And he was an electrical engineer in Oxford. So I went on LinkedIn, I typed in his name, and I found an electrical engineer in Oxford. And I went, that's him. So I added him on LinkedIn. And it's pending. And I head off to multiple streams of property income, and it's still pending. And I'm like, for flip's sake, this dude will not flipping add me. So at multiple streams of property income, we do a Q&A on Friday evening. And Kevin Panescas, one of the speakers at Progressive, was doing these questions. And a guy put his hand up and he said, loads of people put their hand up. And this guy put his hand up and said, Kevin said, what's your name? And he said, it's Saeed. And he said, hi, Saeed. And they asked the question. And anyway, I'm driving home in the car and I'm all frustrated about this portfolio. I'm like flipping hell. So I'm looking for a Saeed and there's a bloody Saeed in the room. Anyway, so Sunday, I'm doing my talk live on stage. I'm doing a 90-minute talk about no money down property investing. And I walk down through the aisle and this guy is sitting in the middle aisle, but right against the edge. And I see his name badge and it says Saeed Tagavi. And I went, that's the guy I'm looking for. Now, I go back up on stage, right? And there's 100 odd people in the room and I'm trying to do my talk and I cannot focus. I'm like, right in the middle of the stage, I went, are you from Oxford? And he said, yes. I said, are you an electrical engineer? He said, yes. I said, are you trying to sell a portfolio? He said, yes. I said, I need to see you. I've been trying to buy it and I just got outbid. Now, I'm sure everybody in the room would have gone, planned, set up, impossible. But it just what transpired was the 16 owners, 16 shareholders, and because he's one of the top three shareholders, he's one of the directors. Mm-hmm. But the reason he showed up at multiple streams of property income was because he was selling the portfolio and he was looking for ways to reinvest it. Okay, so the timing was just perfect. Progressive's biggest property education company in the UK. He obviously went online, looked for them and went, I'm going to have this money coming to me. How do I invest it safely? And he showed up in the room. Now, that's sometimes people sit at home thinking, oh, there's no point going to these events. I met the dude in the room. So I spoke to him at the end and he told me that he didn't even want to sell. So the top 2 shareholders own the majority of the company, over 50%. And they outvoted everybody to sell the thing. So we did a deal with them. I was buying it with a joint venture partner. So doing a no money down deal. We're doing it with a JV partner. A guy called Brian. And I rang Brian and I said, listen, I got this dude in the room at multiple streams of property income. Let's get on a Zoom call tomorrow. So on the Monday, we did a Zoom call and we agreed. Saeed owns 16.5% of the company. And what we agreed was that he would increase his shareholding to 33. I hate this word being Irish. 33 and a third, a 33 and a third. He'd get 1/3 of the company, and I'd get 1/3, and Brian would get 1/3. But he could increase his shareholding to 1/3 without having to put any money in, because he was just going to leave in what he would have been taken out.
Yeah.
You with me so far?
Yeah.
So then it transpires that my offer, because Saeed knew the offer, my offer on a £1.67 million purchase was outbid by 11 grand. Why? Because the agents obviously told the other preferred buyer what my offer was, so that they could keep the management. Now, if the agents are listening to this, I'm not giving your name away, so you don't need to have a go at me. But it's clearly what happened, in my head at least. It's logical. Anyway, we go back to the agent and said, this is what we're going to do. And the agent said, no, it's already sold, etc. And Saeed said, well, I'm the seller. I'm telling you, this is what we're doing. So he got the investors to agree, the other shareholders to agree. And that was January. We're trying to buy it now, and we're down for completion on the 11th of July. So once it's completed, I'll do a YouTube video. I'll post it on social media and stuff. But 11th of July, we're aiming to complete, so long as everything goes to plan. But here's the best bit, Steve. We're buying the company, not the properties, which means what we've done is the company owe 400 grand on a loan to HSBC, 407 odd grand. We've gone to a lender, and the company are going to borrow 1.1 something million, right? That leaves about 500 grand of equity. That means the value of the shares is it's 501 grand. So the value of the shares is 501 grand. Now, if you bought 1.67 million pound property portfolio, the stamp duty would be 165,000 there or thereabouts, just for stamp duty. But if you buy the shares of a company that's debts are 1.1 million, so we refinanced it, and the shareholders take 1.1 million minus the 400 grand. They take 700 grand out on refinance money. We then buy the value of the shares, which is 500 grand, and stamp duty on shares is 0.5%. The stamp duty on the purchase of this 1.67 million pound portfolio is less than 5 grand.
That's immense. I love that.
So we've saved over 159 odd grand in stamp duty by understanding creative property investment techniques. While most people will go and pay way too much money on stamp duty. By the way, the solicitors won't tell you that. This is all about learning how to do property in the right way. So all coming out of meeting somebody in a room that was trying to sell a portfolio. And people say, oh, he got lucky. But actually, you make your own luck. You got to show up and things will start to happen. And a lot of deals I've done with people that I've met in rooms, people that I see out there networking. But this is the biggest one. So hopefully it comes off. We're 2 weeks. We're a week and a half away. No, it's 1 week today, is it? No, Monday. 1 week on Monday. So we're about whatever day this has been recorded. The 7th of July, if this goes live on the 11th of July, sorry. The 11th of July is the target completion date. So whenever you're listening to this, I'll either own it or be about to own it. Or it'll have fallen through. But it won't fall through at this stage.
Well, I reckon we're about 4 or 5 weeks for this going live. So you will be a proud owner.
It'll be done because we've done all the personal guarantees. We've got the loan. We've done everything. The board meetings, everything's pretty much done. We're just waiting for my solicitor to come back from holidays because they've decided to go on holiday in the middle of my biggest ever bloody deal.
It's so selfish. I love it though. Honestly, Kerry, I could listen to your stories all day because they're always just so good. I love the intuition. I love the creativity and just the fact that you can get the deals done, even when, as a kind of layman, as I'd class myself, you sit there and think, that's never going to work. How the hell do you ever get to that point of buying that? And
well, when I spoke to my mortgage broker, about this deal, Steve, I had a voicemail and it's disappeared off my phone. And his exact words, not that I could share it anywhere probably, but the exact words on the voicemail were, I still can't get my head around how you're doing this deal. So, but
that's brilliant. So, okay. So in terms of where we're at now, if there's people that are listening that want to get into property, they're perhaps sat there thinking, I don't have any money. I don't know how to start. Where's the best place to come and find you? What should they be doing? How can they connect with you?
Right. So all over social media, really, just if you went to Google Kevin McDonnell, now that's Kevin, but McDonnell. So Donnell. I'm not a burger if you listen to this. So everyone calls me the burger chain. That burger chain's ruined my life, Steve. But McDonnell, Kevin McDonnell. You'll find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I've got a website, kevinmcdonnell.co.uk. Anywhere like that, just reach out to me and reach out to Steve if you're looking for event tickets. What I'll do is I'll get Steve a link that I'll work out a number of people. But first, so many people. If you want to come and meet me, go to an event, then just reach out to Steve and he can give you. I'll give him a link with details to an upcoming event, and I'll sponsor some tickets for some people. So I can do that as well and send them through Steve. So they can reach out to Steve if you like, or reach out to me. But either way. And yeah, it'd be great if you did. Just come and say hi and let me know you met me on Steve's podcast or heard me on Steve's podcast. It would be cool as well. And I'll feed back to Steve that his audience are really listening.
Thank you. That's amazing. There's a question I always ask at the end of the podcast, and that is, if there's one single piece of advice you'd leave the listeners with, what would that be?
That's really simple. Do something every day to move you forward. Just do one thing every day. Quite often what people do is they overthink things, and they overanalyze things, and they get all confused about stuff, and they freeze and take no action. I don't know where to start. They've got a list of 100 things to do and they go, I don't know where to start. I always say, just do one thing every day to move you forward. So if you literally put into your I've got in my phone at 10 o'clock at night, an alarm goes off, and it's just every single night at 10 o'clock. And if I've not done one thing to move me forward today, I will not go to bed until I've got one thing done. So you can waste loads of time on admin, you can waste loads of time on other stuff, but just do one, what I would call an income generating task per day, or a task that moves you towards that income generation. So like writing a book, you might not say it's not creating me income today, but it will create you income later. So write a chapter a day, or write a page a day. And if it's whatever, looking for creating a product online or whatever it might be, just take one step every single day. If you're going to be doing property investing, don't spend the whole time searching Rightmove. Pick up the phone and ring an agent, and get some letters printed, get some leaflets printed, and then the next day distribute them. So just very simple, do one thing every day to move you forward. And within a year, you'll look back and you'll have probably built a business.
It's so true, isn't it? Kevin, that's been amazing. And I can vouch for Kevin. I've read his book. I've been on his 3-day training masterclass, which is amazing. Kevin, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate coming on and having me on. And yeah, best of luck, and hopefully catch up soon.